Welcome to Jackie's Craft Table. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I'm playing with a fabulous stamp set from Gina K. It's called Sweet Thing, and it has so many fun images and sentiments in this set. I purchased this at her store many months ago. The cards you can create with this set are just endless, but for this video, I'm going to create a thank you card. I'm starting out by stamping the cherry image onto this piece of kraft cardstock. I'm going to make my own pattern paper. I'm going to fill up this panel, and I'm making sure to turn my stamp so they're not all facing the same way. This kraft cardstock is also from Gina K, and I really love her kraft cardstock. It's nice and thick, and it takes the colored pencils very well. I'm randomly coloring in some of the cherries. Some of them I'm just going to leave blank. I'm just using 3 colored pencils, one red, one kind of a dark purpley red for the shadows, and the other is green for the stem. And I'm going to cut this down to 5 1/4 by 4. I'm adding highlights to the cherries with a jelly roll pen. I'm putting the highlight in the same place on all of the cherries. I tried doing this with a colored pencil, but it just wasn't bright enough for me. So the jelly roll pen worked out just great. And now for the cute cupcake. And I'm also going to stamp that onto a piece of kraft cardstock. I'm using my favorite extreme black ink to stamp this up. This stamp set is so versatile, you can kind of mix and match the images. Next, I'm stamping out the frosting with a little cherry on top. Stamping it first onto a piece of acetate is very helpful because you can ink it up and then open the door of your MISTI and see if it's placed where you want it to be. And if not, you could just rub off the ink from the acetate and try it again, which is what I'm doing here. I just want it tilted a little bit more. So I'm going to try this again. I'm going to ink it up until I get it situated perfectly. I keep this piece of acetate on the side of my desk because I'm always using it. This time I get it aligned where it's not overlapping the cupcake liner. And it looks good, and so I can just remove the acetate and stamp right onto my card panel now. It would be a good idea to stamp out a couple of these images while you have the stamp aligned where you like it, and then you could make up a couple of cards. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to stamp out the one cupcake. I'm going to leave this stamp on the door of my MISTI so that I can restamp my images after I do all of my coloring. The colored pencils can kind of dull your lines, and so this really helps to crisp them up again. I used my colored pencil to color in the highlight on this cherry. I'm going to put some crystal glaze on this cherry after I'm done with my coloring, and the crystal glaze doesn't play well with the gel pens for some reason. It seems to dull the effect of the gel pens. On the bottom of this cupcake, I was using the Faber-Castell white colored pencil, but it just isn't as bright as the Prismacolor white, so I switched to that. And as you can see, my little white Prismacolor pencil has been well used. I'm going to be needing to buy a new one here soon, but it's just a brighter white than the Faber-Castell white pencil. I'm using a blue colored pencil to put some shadows on my frosting. All of the layers of colored pencil that I'm coloring on this image are really starting to dull the lines, but I am going to fix that in the end, as I mentioned. I didn't bother coloring around the sprinkles with my white colored pencil. As you can see, you can layer right over the white pencil, and it even seems to brighten up your colors. And I'm just randomly pulling out bright colored pencils to color in these cute sprinkles. Coloring on kraft cardstock is one of my favorite techniques to do. You should really give it a try if you haven't. And now to color in the cake part of my cupcake. I want the top to look kind of golden, like a white cupcake. I'm putting down several layers, and I'm not pressing down very hard. If I press too hard, then the paper won't accept multiple layers of your colored pencils. It's the layering that adds the dimension to your image. So I put down a base color with this lighter green, and now I'm going in with a darker green to add some shadows. And I have to go in between every one of these little pleats to make it a little more realistic looking. And I go over that several times with these pencils. I put this panel back in my mini MISTI and inked up the stamp again, and you can really see quite a difference after I re-stamp it. It just pops a lot more. I do fussy cut the image out, but I didn't show it on camera because it does take me a long time. I go really slow. I'm going to stamp my sentiment onto a piece of vellum. So I'm using some VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I ink that up 2 times just to get a nice crisp impression. I'm going to pull this out of my mini MISTI and pour over some clear embossing powder. And I'm just using a piece of type paper to catch the excess. I heat up my heat tool for a good minute, and I'm being very careful not to put it to my paper for very long, because it does bubble and warp really fast. So I just do it for less than a second, and then I take it off again. I put some foam squares behind my cupcake image, and I'm going to stick that right onto the vellum. I'm using vellum because I didn't want to cover up the cute card panel with all of the cherries on it. I'm going to apply that to a red card base with some Gina K Connect glue. And I'm going to decorate the inside of this card base before I attach the cupcake. So the sentiment on the outside is going to say thank you. And on the inside, I'm using a cute sentiment that came in this set. And it says, with a cherry on top. And then I'm also going to stamp out that cherry stamp one more time by the sentiment. And I'm going to heat emboss this as well with some more clear embossing powder. This just adds a bit of shine to the words. And again, I'm being very careful not to warp the card base. I kept the scraps from the panel when I cut it down, and I'm just going to use those on the inside of my card. I thought they looked kind of cute. And I'm just going to overlap those at the corner. I'm adding more liquid adhesive behind this vellum, and it's going to be hidden by the cupcake and by the sentiment. You can see glue really well from behind the vellum, so you have to be careful not to let it show through. And then I can just place this in the middle of my card base. I'm going to add some Wink of Stella to the cherry, just to give it a little bit of shine. And then once that is dry, I come in with some crystal glaze. I'm using a pin just to get it to the very edges of this cherry, and I allow that to dry overnight. In this shot, it's still wet, so it's still kind of opaque. Here's another look at the inside of this card. I hope this video has inspired you to sit down and create something awesome. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.